promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Outrage in Nigeria's Benue as youth protest deadly attack on Yawata villages in Makurdi.
IDPs in our own very country. These killings have persisted for years. A lot of talks have gone on. If President Tinubu is overwhelmed by this insecurity in North Central, in Benue, in Plateau, in Taraba, he should step aside. He should resign.
Rebels ambush army convoy and down military aircraft in northern Mali amid rising tensions. Togo's bishops renew call for dialogue and denounce rights violations following June 6 protests. And Ghanaian government postpones one Ghana city fuel levy over soaring prices triggered by Iran-Israel tensions.
I've asked our Minister of Finance and Minister of Energy to keep a close eye on the development and model the possible impacts on our petroleum prices and prepare measures to protect the recent gains that we have made.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast this afternoon. Let's begin in Nigeria's north-central state of Benue, where outrage is mounting as youth take over the streets of the state capital Makurdi to protest the latest deadly attacks on villages in Yawata. The assault, reportedly carried out by suspected armed herders, has left many grieving and angry. Demonstrators are calling for swift action and accountability from both state and federal authorities. Correspondent Yecheno Sasetu has more details in this report.
Tension rose in Makurdi on Sunday as angry youths stormed the Wurukum food basket roundabout to protest the killing of residents in Yelwata, Guma local government area of Benue State. The protest followed Saturday's deadly attack allegedly carried out by armed herders, which left scores feared dead, including women, children, and the elderly. The protesters expressed outrage over what they described as the continued silence of President Bola Tinubu and Benue State Governor Hyacinth Alia.
Our people cannot go back to their farms. Our people cannot go back to their ancestral homes. And these farms are the places where they farm, they labor to feed us, to train us in schools.
We have become IDPs in our own very country. These killings have persisted for years. A lot of talks have gone on. If President Tinubu is overwhelmed by this insecurity in North Central, in Benue, in Plateau, in Taraba, he should step aside. He should resign. They should stop playing politics with human lives.
Please, we are calling on Mr. President to speak to us. No condolence message, nothing. Is Remu Tinubu a mother at all? She should talk to us. What is happening?
When the Deputy Governor of Benue State, Sam Ode, attempted to calm the crowd and address their concerns, the protesters rejected his intervention, insisting the governor must appear in person. Meanwhile, the community of Yelwata remains tense as residents mourn the loss of loved ones and demand urgent security measures. For WADR, Yechinu Sasetu in Abuja.
Meanwhile, the small-scale women farmers of Nigeria, Swafon, is urging swift government intervention to end the bloodshed in Benue State. Swafon's call comes on the backdrop of increased attacks against farmers, including women, who are sometimes killed or subjected to dehumanizing treatment by their assailants. Makurdi, referred to as a food basket of Nigeria, is home to the country's largest agricultural harvest, both for local consumption and export to neighboring countries. Women, therefore, constitute a major percentage of the workforce on farmlands and income and support for their families. Veronica Gomez, State Coordinator of Swafon, tells WDR that women in 17 local government areas of the state have been denied access to farmlands and are living in deplorable conditions.
In our place, women farm as well as men. We make the ridges, we make the heaps, we plant groundnuts, we plant so many things. And if we are not allowed to go to the farms, what do we eat tomorrow? What do we give our children? Like you see, I have 5 children, all graduates. And it is from this my farm work that I send food to them. So if I'm stopped from farming, what shall we eat tomorrow? We cannot go to the market and start buying food because of the price there. And without our land, we cannot farm. And this is the season for farmers. You know, when this season comes, farmers are always active. We make sure we plant at the exact time so that we harvest at good time. And because of this, if the women go to the farm, at times they rape them, they kill them. Just of recent, in Balom, in Wewes, one of our women was killed. She had just 5 months old baby. She lay there dead. The baby didn't know that the mother is dead. He was just lying by her side, being comforted with the presence of the mother, not knowing that there was no life in that woman.
We recall that a couple of weeks ago, a delegation from the federal government was in Benue State.
Very well, they came.
You had the National Security Advisor, the police chief. They all came. There was a consultative meeting that was held with stakeholders there.
With the AFAM, yes. One thing I want to tell you is, in fact, maybe they came as spies to go and tell Fulanis to come more. Because few days after that meeting, we had series of attacks where the Fulanis came and killed people, over 30 or so. They have even vandalized their places. They have sent them packing. These people have come to stay in the places that is not theirs.
Madam Veronica Gomez is the state coordinator of small-scale women farmers of Nigeria, SWAFON. We do have more on that conversation on our guest interview segment. In the meantime, in the Central Saharan state of Mali, tensions are once again flaring in the northern region, where clashes have erupted between the rebel group, the Azawad Liberation Front, FLA, and the Malian army, backed by Russian instructors from the African Corps. The FLA claims responsibility for a deadly ambush on a military convoy, and the downing of a Malian aircraft claims the army strongly denies. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
A military convoy of over 40 vehicles which departed from Gao came under heavy fire from Azawad Liberation Front FLA fighters between Anefis and Aguehok in the Kidal region. In a statement, the FLA claimed it had launched a full-scale offensive in northern Mali. The group says several dozen Malian soldiers and Africa Corps fighters were killed in the ambush. It also claims to have destroyed about 20 military vehicles, including an armored vehicle and several trucks, and seized fuel and weapons. The rebels acknowledged losing 3 of their own fighters in the clash. In response, the Malian army says it launched a vigorous counterattack with aerial support. According to the General Staff, 10 rebel fighters were neutralized and several of their vehicles destroyed. The army insists that the situation is now under control and that the convoy is continuing its advance toward Aguehok. Meanwhile, the FLA also claims it shot down a Malian military aircraft during recent fighting. But Malian authorities categorically deny this, stating that the crash was caused by poor weather conditions. The aircraft reportedly made an emergency landing in a river near the runway of Gao Airport. The army said both pilots were rescued unharmed and are receiving treatment at a military hospital in the region. An investigation is underway to determine the cause of the crash.
Our Bamako correspondent Aliu Cham filed in that report and voiced by Abdullah Hassan.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now let's take you to Togo, where bishops have once again expressed concern over the country's socio-political situation. Following their ordinary session held last week in Lomé, the capital, the prelates strongly condemned violence, disformation and violations of fundamental rights. Christopher Tisho has the details.
This latest reaction from the bishops comes after a review of the current socio-political context in Togo, particularly the protest held on June 6. Father Emile Segbedi is the Secretary General of the Episcopal Conference of Togo.
The bishops firmly condemned all forms of violence, regardless of their source, and denounced the culture of lies and disinformation that undermines the aspiration for harmonious coexistence. They call for calm as well as for the fundamental rights of all citizens.
In their message, the bishops issued a solemn call for dialogue and national unity. They also urged the faithful to intensify their prayers.
The bishops once again invite the faithful of the church in Togo and all people of goodwill to continue praying so that all sons and daughters of our beloved country may truly recognize one another as brothers and sisters, capable of love instead of hatred, and come together to generously work towards building the earthly city as a joinings towards the heavenly one, except from the prayer for peace in Togo.
Beyond political concerns, the bishops also addressed several other issues during their 139th session, including education, priestly formation, and university pastoral care.
Lome correspondent Silvia Wadrago's report there, presented by Christopher Aticho. In Liberia, the chairman of the Solidarity and Trust for New Day Stand, Molba Molu, is alleging police intimidation ahead of a planned nationwide protest on July 17. This rally is part of a broader movement calling for accountability and change in Liberia's leadership. Mr. Molu has been actively urging Liberians to participate in the protest dubbed Enough is Enough, to voice their frustrations over the rising costs of living and economic hardships inflicted by President Joseph Boakai's administration. WDL's Monrovia correspondent Ibrahim Parker reports.
The protest, expected to draw schools of participants, marks the first large-scale demonstration just a year and 6 months into the current government's tenure. In recent remarks, Chairman of the Solidarity and Trust for a New Day Stand, Molba Molu, condemned what he described as police intimidation tactics aimed at discouraging demonstrators. He emphasized the resilience of the Liberian people, stating that citizens are stronger than any authority, and called for a united stand against greed and lawlessness.
We cannot be intimidated. You can't scare me. Nothing will stop July 17. They start wasting taxpayers' money on surveillance, tapping my phone, having people in cars tailing me around, deploying police posts at Stan's headquarters, paying grenade men to attack me as I'm making my rounds to communities. These things will not work. If Molba Molu dies before the 17th of July, my coffin will go to that rally.
Molba Molu also urged the citizens to join the movement and announced that 100,000 t-shirts will be printed to symbolize their solidarity with the cause. He insisted that government officials must be held accountable and answer to the people.
July 17th is your day, the day of the people. Liberians, prepare yourselves. The July Revolution will take part in every major city in Liberia. Liberians will rise up to say, enough is enough.
While the Liberia National Police, through Inspector General Greco Coleman, assured the public that their duty is to protect the state and uphold law and order, Molu remains confident that the protest will be peaceful. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
The African Union delegation has completed its mission in Côte d'Ivoire. The team, led by Mohamed Saleh Anadif, former Chadian Minister of Foreign Affairs, met with various stakeholders involved in the electoral process. Following the visit, the AU pledged to support Côte d'Ivoire in ensuring a peaceful presidential election. But with just 4 months to the general elections in October 2025, and as tensions continue to rise, what real impact can this diplomatic initiative have? Augustine Coley tells us more.
During his stay, Mohamed Saleh Anadif held talks with various political groups and institutional bodies involved in the electoral process. He leaves with a comprehensive understanding of the situation, a perspective the African Union hopes will help bridge divides, restore trust, and most importantly, encourage Ivorian political actors to return to dialogue. A return to inclusive dialogue, observers say, is key to diffusing tensions and easing growing public anxiety ahead of the October 2025 presidential election. Felix Boni, a journalist and political analyst, says,
I believe this visit was useful because it likely gave the African Union all the necessary information and possible levers to engage in quiet diplomacy, working behind the scenes to help prevent a crisis. I'm naturally optimistic, and as long as there's even the slightest hope, I'll hold on to it. Dialogue is still possible, but I must admit that hope is slim, especially since much of what's was happening now could have been addressed through dialogue long ago.
Meanwhile, Dr. Nuruddin Oyeole, an expert in political communication, agrees that the AU's visit offers some hope. However, he cautions that the ultimate responsibility for a peaceful election lies with the Ivorian people, who must reject violence and demonstrate democratic maturity.
The key lies with the population. How will people respond? Will the opposition's call to protest gain traction on the ground? That's the big question. There may be unrest, but whether it escalates into a crisis depends on the people. At this point, the solution rests largely with the opposition, which needs to rethink its overall strategy. What matters most is political alternation, not individuals.
As the election date gets closer, the political climate continues to heat up. The opposition is intensifying calls for inclusive dialogue, demanding, among other things, a revision of the electoral register and the reinstatement of several disqualified candidates. Meanwhile, the ruling party is sticking to its position, insisting on strict compliance with the law and decisions handed down by the country's institutions.
Marcel Harrison Blair's report presented by Augustine Colley. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Outrage in Nigeria's Benue's youth protest deadly attack on Yawata villages in Makurdi. Rebels ambush army convoy and down military aircraft in northern Mali amidst rising tensions. Togo's bishops renew call for dialogue and denounce rights violations following June 6 protests. And still ahead in the news, Ghanaian government postpones Ghana Cedi fuel levy over soaring oil prices triggered by Iran-Israel tensions. We do have a press review, the guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org and follow live stream on YouTube and Facebook. Now, in Ghana, the government has suspended the implementation of the controversial One Ghana Cedi fuel levy, originally scheduled to take effect on Monday, June 16, 2025. The levy, introduced under the Energy Sector Levies Amendment Act, was expected to raise about 5.7 billion Ghana Cedi annually to support debt recovery in the energy sector. But according to the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition, the suspension follows broad consultation with stakeholders and takes into account the sharp rise in global oil prices driven by tensions between Iran and Israel. This move aligns with President Mahama's directive for the Energy and Finance Ministries to protect the gains made in recent fuel price reductions. And here is Ghana's President Mahama speaking.
Despite the work we have done in stabilizing the economy, Ghana is not immune from the shocks of global events. Recent events in the Middle East, which involve an exchange of missiles between Israel and Iran, have started to escalate crude oil prices dramatically. I've asked our Minister of Finance and Minister of Energy to keep a close eye on the development and model the possible impacts on our petroleum prices and prepare measures to protect the recent gains that we have made.
Ghana's President John Mahama speaking there. Now, China is considering eliminating import tariff for 53 African countries. The Chinese authorities made the announcement recently during the 4th edition of the China-Africa Economic and Trade Expo. Beijing, which imports raw materials from Africa, says it wants to further boost trade with the continent. The move comes at a time when the administration of Donald Trump recently imposed a base tariff of 10% on nearly all imports to the United States, with rates rising to as much as 50% for some African countries. Well, how could the removal of tariff benefit African nations? Have a listen to Malian economist Modibo Mao Makalu.
Nous avons quand même beaucoup de difficultés aujourd'hui pour les
We are facing serious difficulties today with African exports and imports, largely because of the trade war launched by the U.S. administration against 485 countries through tariff impositions. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGWA, is struggling, even though in 2023, trade under the program reached nearly $50 billion in Africa's favor. China's move comes at the the right time, especially with AGWA set to expire in September 2025. There is a bill in the U.S. Congress to extend it to 2041, but with the April 2, 2025 Liberation Day declaration focusing on U.S. economic sovereignty, offshoring jobs will become more difficult. AGWA was supposed to accelerate Africa's industrialization and boost trade. Now, there is a need for alternative. Unfortunately, Africa still mostly exports raw materials and imports manufactured goods. China is our main trading partner, and in 2024, trade between China and Africa reached $300 billion.
Malian economist Modibo Mao Makalude.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, we'll remain in Nigeria for the newspaper review with Yechen Sasetu.
Greetings from Abuja, Nigeria. Beginning with Vanguard newspapers. The leading story is protest on Benue killings, outreach as protesters block roads. And perhaps in response to that, there's a story on reps to convene legislative dialogue on national security architecture Monday. About politics, 2027 APC governors NAS caucus want retention of Tinubu Shettima ticket. But Showore calls opposition fake, explaining how APC controls with air quotes PDP, LP, others. Beware of drug-laced sweets in children's bags. NDLEA warns. This I'm sure will interest parents. Moving to Nigerian Tribune, the leading story is on the Benue crisis. However, there is hope as Tinubu directs security chiefs to implement earlier directive, tasks Governor Aliya on reconciliation. And about the economy, CBN injects $580 million to stabilize Naira amid dwindling reserves, while Dangote Petroleum Refinery to begin distribution of PMS and diesel nationwide. Again, Benue killings top the headlines in this day newspaper. Tinubu, Benue killings depressing. We must not allow this to continue. Enough is enough. There's controversy about the newly innovated ICC, and this story says 39 billion naira ICC renovation contract, CP, PDP petitions, EFCC. Another story says ECOWAS plans life without Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali. In The Guardian, Pope decries terrible massacre in Benue as Tinubu rallies security chiefs. Petrol price hike, scarcity loom over Middle East tension, tanker drivers strike. And Imo government shuts schools over diphtheria outbreak in Olu. Flash floods, Lagos urges residents to stay alert amid heavy rainfall warnings. And from the sports section, Osimhen may become Man U's most expensive signing in history. And finally in Punch, prioritize competence, not tribe, in choosing leaders. Obi urges Nigerians. 3.6 billion naira ground rent. Federal government in last-minute talks with embassies. And finally, Benue killings. Military deploys air surveillance. IG takes over security. And that's it on Press Review today. Back to the studio.
Many thanks. Yes, that's it with the Press Review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, we remain in Nigeria, where the continued killings in Benue State, often referred to as the food basket of the nation, pose a serious threat to Nigeria's food security. Over the years, Benue has experienced relentless attacks, particularly targeting rural farming communities, the very backbone of the state's agricultural productivity. The latest wave of violence has once again raised deep concerns about the safety of farmers and the future of food production in the region. According to our guest, Madam Veronica Gomez, State Coordinator of the Small-Scale Women Farmers of Nigeria, SWAFON, if these attacks are not urgently curtailed, the disruption of farming activities could lead to reduced harvest, displaced of rural populations, and rising food prices, all of which will have far-reaching consequences for both local and national food supply.
So how is SWAFON helping these women in the affected local government areas of Benue State through this period?
What SWAFON is doing so far now is just encouragement, because we cannot talk of any inputs or any relief materials that is being given to them. The only thing we keep telling ourselves, pray, so that this problem we have will one day be a thing of the past.
We recall that a couple of weeks ago, a delegation from the federal government was in Benue State.
Very well, they came.
You had the National Security Advisor, the police chief. They all came.
They came.
There was a consultative meeting that was held with stakeholders there.
With their farm. One thing I want to tell you is, in fact, maybe they came as spy to go and tell Fulanis to come more. Because few days after that meeting, we had series of attacks where the Fulanis came and killed people, over 30 or so. They have even vandalized their places. They have sent them packing. These people have come to stay in the places that is not theirs. So that is what the women are going through now. Their husbands being killed. Let the government come out and help us. Our governor is trying, but let him try more. Let him try more.
But Mommy, what do you fear will be the long-term effect of this crisis if it remains unresolved?
I fear because of our children. Because some of us, we might want to take our exit. But our new generation who are just coming in, if this thing continues like that, will these children grow to see the age we are in? Or will it be Nigeria as a whole? Me, I'm thinking that these Fulanis really want to take over Nigeria. It's not just an argument on we farmers telling them not to eat our crops or this. They seriously want to take over Nigeria. And by doing that, they want to eliminate every person. So if this thing continues, tomorrow you may not have anybody alive. They might even come to the headquarters where orders to run to commerce. Like
Madam Veronica Gomez is the state coordinator of small-scale women farmers of Nigeria, SWAFON. And in sport news, the national men's rugby team of Senegal beat Switzerland 27-14 in a friendly match as part of preparations for the Africa Cup of Nations scheduled for next month in Uganda. Mustafa Njaye, Huka Usman, Suma Winger and Mamadou Njaye center scores tries. Seibu Sako converted 2 penalties. The Rugby Lions are preparing for the Africa Cup of Nations, which will be held in July 2025. This competition serves as a qualifier for the 2027 World Cup in Australia. The winner will qualify directly and the runner-up will advance to the Nations Cup through a playoff. And that's it on this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting in Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falei Lusso and Sheikh Njai for the technical support. Do interact with us on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, WDL News, and Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Coming up next at the bottom of the hour is our flagship health program, Wellbody. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening.